Useless woman.
Optic camouflage, huh? I hope that's not your only trick.
You doubt my power? Now, I will show you why I am the most powerful practitioner of psychokinesis and telepathy in the world. No, there's no need for words, Snake. I'm Psychomantis. That's right. This is no trick. It's true power. It's useless, I told you. I can read your every thought.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of PlayStation Pals, a video game podcast about all things PlayStation. I'm your host, Nick, and I'm joined by the solid snake to my liquid snake, John. How are you doing today, John?
I'm fantastic, Nick. We actually got some relevant news, some cool things to talk about today, that we didn't think we were going to, so I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, so here's the format of the show. We're going to get right into it. We each bring 3 things for a total of 6 things. They can be a video game we're playing, a topic, a Reddit thread, an email to PlayStationPalsPod@gmail.com, any of those things. So we're going to bring those things, we're going to talk about it. And what you just heard was a clip from the original Metal Gear Solid, because we were planning on doing an entire episode based on our favorite boss fights. We recorded on Friday last week. It was supposed to be a slow holiday week here in the States. July 4th is a holiday here. But that didn't stop news from happening. So we're going to do 2 news items, and then we're going to go into our favorite boss fights. So a little bit of each thing. But before we get to that, there were some things I wanted to talk about, some show notes here. I wanted to thank our friend Jeff for updating the podcast art. You may have noticed, if you've been listening since the beginning, the art changed. It got a little more crisper. It got the title on there. And I just wanted to do a special shout out to Jeff for helping us with that.
Yay, Jeff! You don't get a lot of applause from me for most things, but in this one, well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah. And then there were some smaller news items before we get into the 2 big news items. I just wanted to mention that Forspoken, a game we talked about last week in our 2022 preview, got delayed out of this year already.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. I mean, honestly, I think that's a good delay, being that Square Enix was piling on the JRPGs this fall, so I think that was a good move.
Yeah. So this is going to be a running theme in the show, is like things that we talked about last week are going to be brought up again. Yeah. And with Forspoken moving out, Valkyrie Elysium is moving in, another JRPG from Square. It is coming September 29th. And then we talked about Ubisoft last week. Ubisoft's got things to talk about, and they're going to have a big event this September 10th where they're going to talk about multiple games. So, as we talked last week, John, we were hoping that Ubisoft would show what they're working on because we weren't happy with their current output. And sure enough, right after we record, there it is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my happiness level has changed, but at least we got some more news.
Yes, but on top of that, we got a megaton this week. The big news, again, something we talked about on the last show. And John, what did we get?
We got our release date for God of War Ragnarok. So, talking as anybody who listened last week knows, there's been all this kerfluffle among the internet people where, it's where's our date, where's our info, it's getting close, you told us this year, blah, blah, blah. And out of nowhere, Sony kind of just, gave us the info we've been looking for. It's interesting because, we got all the release or the leaks and things last week where people were like, well, it's going to happen on the 30th. And then all this information came out a couple days before. And so it almost seems like Sony just wanted to be a little bit vindictive and just kind of say, ha, 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 we have the power here, you don't. And we're just going to drop it on a random Wednesday, which is fine. But just a little bit of information about it. So November 9th is the date, which is a Wednesday.
Wednesday. That's a little odd because games usually drop on Tuesdays or Fridays. So it's a little weird that they're doing November 9th, but that is when we are going to get to play the second game in this duology. Is that what they call a trilogy with two things? Or I might be making up words, but. So that's when we're going to see the conclusion of the Norse saga for Kratos, and then with this date announcement, we were given a 30-second CG trailer titled "The Father and Son" trailer, which I believe is the name of the platinum trophy in the first God of War 2, which is kind of a funny little Easter egg. But only a 30-second spot. It didn't show too much. Just kind of Kratos and Atreus working side by side, fighting your standard monsters. But at the end of the trailer, we did get a pretty awesome stare down between our boy Atreus and Kratos with Fenrir, which is a giant wolf in Norse mythology, which I think that shot alone is very, very exciting. One of my I think God of War 2018 is, as I've said before, one of the greatest games ever made. It's immaculate from top to bottom. But if I did have to nitpick it, one thing that is a little bit of a sticking point for me is there wasn't a lot of that large-scale fighting that you would see in some of the previous entries in the series. I think of the Colossus of Rhodes fight from God of War 2, the Hydra from God of War 1, Kronos from God of War 1, and not to mention all the Olympians you take on in 3. So, we obviously got, the big dragon fight, and you fought the same big troll a couple times, but I think they could have maybe done a little bit better job with having those big, imposing, impressive scale fights, and so here's hoping that kind of points to that. But, a couple other small notes, Atreus obviously looks a little bit older, sounds a little bit older, which, it works out perfectly because I'm sure the actor is aging and obviously the exact same way. So I think that looks and sounds good. But yeah, man, I'm just super, super excited. This is I would say it's been the game I've been looking forward to more than probably anything else. And, just to have those fears of a potential push out of 2022 alleviated is a nice feeling. So, definitely hyped about that. But, yeah, what are your kind of initial thoughts, Nick? What did you, any takeaways from that, or was it kind of, I got it all covered there?
Yeah, you definitely got it all covered. I think you and me are in the same boat where we don't want to see much more of this game. We're in. I think everyone's in. 2018 God of War, it was game of the year. It was incredible. It beat out Red Dead Redemption 2. Right. So it's an incredible game. We know the sequel is going to be awesome from what we've seen at the Sony showcase last year. So it was really nice that we just got the CG trailer and enough of a tease with Fenrir to whet our appetite. Obviously, they're probably going to show more leading up to release here, but it was the perfect amount of information to get. And yeah the confirmation that it's coming November and early November.
It's perfect.
Me and John both submitted our time off. We're going to be playing the heck out of this game. So.
Yeah. Already put the the ear into my wife's ear that there might be some nights I need a little bit of me time to crush through this game because I really want to absorb myself in and see everything it has. But just a couple other small pieces about it. Pre-orders for the game go live July 15th at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're looking to get your copy secured, that's the way to do it. I would never be a proponent of pre-ordering games, but I would bet almost my firstborn that this game is going to be well worth the money to the price of entry. So probably going to want to jump on that. And then they also did kind of show two cool things, which was the unboxing, or I'm sorry, I guess it's one thing but two different editions. They did an unboxing with the actor that plays Thor in the game, as well as the art director of the series. So kind of showed off these two these two extra tiers of the game that you can get. So with the collector's edition, they're throwing in a 16-inch Thor replica hammer, and then your standard collector's item stuff. You get your dices, your pins, your cloth map, things like that. That comes with the collector's edition, and then the top tier edition is called the Jotnar edition, which comes with the previously mentioned things, but also a 7-inch vinyl soundtrack of the game. And it comes in this really cool hidden compartment. I forget the name of they're almost like cabinets in the first game, that you kind of open up and they tell this story. It looks like one of those. So it's really cool. One thing that I want to point out about this, though, that I find very weird is they give you an awesome steel case, which, some people have mixed feelings about steel cases. I think they look cool. But there's no disc in there, man. They're not giving you the disc. They're literally just giving you a code to download the game. And I know that's the trajectory of the industry, and we don't have to get into, physical versus digital, but it is just a very interesting thing to note, and I believe the Horizon Collector's Edition did that as well. So, it seems to be a trend, I guess, maybe going forward, that Collector's Editions are going to come with that, but, honestly, that alone is just going to make me want to buy just the game, because I'm a physical guy myself, so that's just a weird little thing to note.
Yeah, why even include it at all? So you can physically show you have the game, but you don't actually have the physical edition.
Well, I guess I imagine if you're the kind of person that's willing to fork over a couple $100 for a game just to have some of the items, you're probably a person that's interested in showcasing or putting out things to display for friends, family, whatever. So I could see some people wanting to just kind of put the steel case out next, alongside their Thor's hammer, obviously, because the Thor hammer is going to be a centerpiece for somebody's setup. So, but yeah, man, I think it's still just kind of why not give people the option? If you want to have 2 SKUs for a collector's edition, you could, or whatever the case. It's just a weird move.
Yeah.
So, and then I just have one final question, Nick, that I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
And I know we're gonna have more Ragnarok talk coming up. But do you think this game has a chance of matching or exceeding the original, or do you think it's just going to be kind of more of the same?
Yeah. Well, it'll definitely be more of the same, but it could be better if they, as you mentioned, if they can channel that scale that God of War was known for before this soft reboot. I think that could get more people into it, and just new mechanics. I mean, I don't have a firstborn son, but I would also bet my firstborn son that Mjolnir, the Thor's hammer, is going to be a weapon you wield in this. Yeah. And if they can come up with some cool mechanics that use that, it definitely could be. It's very hard for the second outing to be better than the first. There's not a lot of examples. I know Assassin's Creed 2 or Mass Effect 2, but when you have
those are building off of not perfect games already.
Yeah, weaker showings. So it'll probably review lower. It does seem like reviewers these days are a little more tepid, so they're a little less likely to give out the 10s that they used to. Yeah. But it very well could. It very well could. But I would say I bet a 90, which will just put it just under its previous scores.
I'm pumped. I'm sure Sony's going to put out a state of play probably in a month or two leading up to the game. As we said, though, we're in. Don't need to see any more. And yeah, man, can't fucking wait.
Yep, November 9th, here we come.
Yes.
All right, so moving on to the next big news of the week. Again, such a slow week. And another thing that we talked about last week in our Ubisoft conversation was Skull and Bones. And Ubisoft, first thing this week, said, hey, we're doing a showcase. We're doing it this Thursday. Come see the game. We're going to show it off. And they did. They brought everything you'd want. They announced the release date. It is coming November 8th, 2022. It is being developed by Ubisoft Singapore. They showed off gameplay of the game. It's a kind of a open world, but it doesn't have a campaign, kind of very similar to Sea of Thieves. They'll have 20 players on a server. They'll have PvP servers, PvE servers, with the main goal of this game being to build your infamy up. And you do that by doing jobs and missions. And with that, you can customize your ship, not only the weapon loadouts, the furniture inside, the customization, but your character as well. There are multiple unique ship types. There's going to be a faster ship. There's going to be a weapon ship that can hold more cannons. It's just there will be no third-person gameplay other than you'll be able to walk with your person in like these hubs, these pirate towns, these pirate dens. Yeah, so they showed off, they had a CG trailer to start with, and then they had an interview with a few developers, and then they went into a larger gameplay trailer. I know we were kind of, and hopefully impress us with this game, because it's been in development as reportedly as early as 2013, so it's been a while. But John, what did you think of everything they showed there?
I think it has potential. I think it definitely is more of a niche product for a certain kind of gamer. But I don't think it's what a lot of people were hoping for, especially after 10 years of delays or 8 years of delays, as this was originally pitched as DLC to Assassin's Creed Black Flag in 2013. So, I think they did a good job when it comes to the customizableness of the game, building your crew, building your ship. But that's kind of things that you would come to expect in today's games, let alone a Ubisoft title. So, that's not surprising. I think the big thing that people were really hoping for is that there would be some sort of third-person camera gameplay combat, thing where maybe you can get off on an island, explore, get some treasure, some buried treasure, and take it back to your ship. But doesn't seem to be what's happening here. But that being said, again, I think it'll hit good, or it'll be a good game for specific people. It's just not my style, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean the ship combat was very fun in Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So they do good ship combat, but it'll be interesting how well they can make a game around just this concept. Will it be fun to be doing this for hours and hours as you're leveling up? Because I think the thing we were hoping for most was like a one-on-one with Sea of Thieves. You can walk around your ship, you can interact with it, you can jump off your ship, swim, board another ship, attack other people. But unfortunately the game doesn't have it, and I guess that's what we should have expected given what the ship combat was in the previous titles. But you did board other ships, like in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I remember boarding other ships and killing people on them. So
yeah, I mean, it's possible that they have some more tricks up their sleeve. They got a couple months till release, and they may have another deep dive. It's just, I don't know, man. I mean, if they say, did they really say there's no campaign in the game?
Yes. So IGN had 7 notable things from the presentation today, and the no campaign was the front and center.
That's
option.
rough, man, because I know they also said too that everything in the game can be played by a single by a individual. You don't have to team up with other people, and it's just like, again, how is that not going to become very stale for a person, where you're just going into your ship, you have your cannonballs, you have your fire, and you have your mortars, and that's it. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's going to be ways to customize all that stuff, but I just can't see how that could hold interest for a long time, especially when you're releasing the game a day before God of War, you're releasing it a month after Call of Duty. It almost seems like Ubisoft is just kind of sick of having this game on their books, and they just want to get this behind them. And if some people have fun, great, but like, we're not going to try and make this the next big thing, is what it seems like to me.
Yeah, it has the bonus of being a unique gameplay mechanic. There's not a ship, pirate game out there that's, Sea of Thieves is like this, but not that one so focused on the ship-to-ship combat. And
that's what's a bummer, though. That's the problem. It's like you guys have this open genre, this open area to explore, and it just seems like you're taking this either the safe way out, or you ran out of money, or it just doesn't seem. It seems half-baked, I guess.
Yeah. And it is a live service game, so just like Sea of Thieves, that kind of caught steam as more and more updates got to it. I imagine this game will be in the same boat. It'll be forgotten in November because, as you mentioned, all these other big games are coming out around it. But I mean, one thing Ubisoft does is they stick with their games. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is still getting DLC. They turn things around for Rainbow Six Siege. So even if this comes out a lukewarm, if there's some solid bones there, and Ubisoft's committed to pouring more money into it, more updates, it could have after year one, it might be a really amazing game to play. They could introduce the third person combat, on foot combat and all that stuff to it. So
that's a good point. I mean, that is a good point. Ubisoft does like to keep their things alive as long as they can. I get the feeling this is going to be more of a Riders Republic and less of a like Division 2 thing where you have Riders Republic, which tackles extreme sports, and people who like extreme sports are going to get into it, but people who aren't, like, that, it's not a game for me at all. Like, there's no way that anybody would want to play that. And kind of the same thing here. Do you like slow, methodical combat as opposed to twitchy first-person shooters? Maybe this would be cool. I just don't think it's going to achieve that level of the public's mind share that they're hoping to get, where Twitch streamers are going to be all about it. This reeks of a game that they pay a bunch of Twitch streamers $50,000 on the first week to play, and then the second week nobody's playing it. So
yeah. But again, I think that was Sea of Thieves' trajectory too. So if they can stick with it, maybe there'll be a great game there eventually. So.
Nick is the glass half full of the podcast. I am the glass half empty, and that probably won't ever change, going forward. But I did want to say one other thing about this game that I find interesting, and this is, I don't think this has ever really been confirmed, so take it with a grain of salt. But I did stumble across an article from July 20th, 2021, so almost about a year ago today, that says Ubisoft is still making Skull and Bones because a deal with the Singapore government won't let it die. And upon reading the article a little bit further, it seems like Ubisoft Singapore has accepted some subsidies from the Singapore government or something along those lines. Rumor has it they've spent upwards of $120 million on this game. And so there might be a reason. That might be a reason why this game feels a little half-baked, is, they've tried to restart this project a couple times now. The government of Singapore obviously wants to see something produced because they are expecting some sort of return. And, if they've gotten to this point, they might just be saying, you know what, we got to get it out, and we're just kind of tired of it, but we got to get Singapore what they need. And, I don't know the political ramifications, the ins and outs of all those kind of deals. I just saw that article, found it pretty interesting, and, might shed a little bit of light onto why this game isn't a little more polished after the amount of time they've spent on it. So it's just something to kind of make note of.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to keep our eye on it, and as it comes out and it's good, maybe we might try it, or maybe it'll come to the PlayStation Extra tiers, and then
I bet it will. I bet you will. Even if not, man, it's a Ubisoft game, so give it 2 months, it's gonna be $20.
Right. Yeah. So we'll have our eye on it. So let's move back on track to the original plan here, and we're going to kind of talk about our most memorable boss fights. Just to highlight a few boss fights that we came away with remembering as being a great experience, a great boss fight. And John, do you want to go ahead and kick us off with the first boss fight that is memorable to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of interesting, doing this because, something I realized as I was thinking about what boss fights stick out to me, or, what immediately comes to the front of my mind is that, a lot of boss fights really are just kind of the same thing, where it's just, hey, this is an enemy with higher HP, and so you get to use, your high damage attacks, or you find the specific weakness, and, and those can be fun, those can be cool, but, what really sets apart a boss fight that just is memorable? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something, super gameplay complex related or anything like that. It's something that, as you said when you introduced this topic, something that makes an impact. And so one of the first ones that I thought for me is actually a game that I played the remake of. I never had the chance to play the original. I think I was maybe just a little bit too young for it. It didn't really speak to me, but that's Shadow of the Colossus. And anybody who knows this game knows that the only enemies in the game are the Colossi themselves. There's 16 of them, I believe. And the one that stuck out the most for me was Phalynx, which is the flying dragon sandworm boss that you encounter in the desert. And when we first started playing through this game in the remake, you kind of get introduced to the mechanics. You realize that every boss is a puzzle. You have to figure out how to get on top of this thing, how to climb it. There's specific weak points of the enemies that you need to find. And, I'm going through the game and I'm like, okay, this is really, really cool. I am climbing these, towering creatures, or, ooh, maybe I found one that hides in a cave and I got to figure out how to, bait it out of the cave. And again, really examining the puzzle element of it all. And then I came across this one, Phalynx. And you see it, and it's flying way above you, and you're just thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? Is there a cliff I need to find? Do I need to jump on it? And you just kind of start looking at the boss, and you realize underneath him he's got these balloon-looking things, and you shoot it with your bow and arrow, and it gets a little lower, and you're like, okay, I'm onto something. So you shoot it again, it gets a little bit lower until you get the dragon to basically put its fins into the desert and kind of like graze along the sand as you're riding your horse next to it. And you realize, oh, I can jump on these fins, and then you jump on the fins, and then when you do, the thing takes off, and all of a sudden you're miles above the desert, and the music is so beautiful. It's orchestral violins, cellos, this beautiful melody that starts to play as you're twisting and turning above the deserts, and you're kind of one of the things with all the Colossi is they have this like hair type thing on them that basically signifies this is where you can grab on, this is where you can keep hold, because they're trying to obviously get you off and not die. And it was such a memorable experience because up to that point in the game there was nothing like it. There was, I believe, one other flying Colossi, but it wasn't the same sense of scale. It was kind of more a little confined, and so, you're trying to hang on for dear life. You're crawling along the back of the spine of this thing, trying to find the next weak point. He's doing barrel rolls, trying to throw you off. Again, all the while, this beautiful music's taking place, and it's just kind of one of those moments where I just you really appreciate the design of a game and not needing to overcomplicate things, but simply changing it up a little bit, figuring out a way to keep you on your toes and just have a new experience, that's outside of anything you've ever had before. And for a game whose only enemies are these creatures. I think it was just the highlight, by far and away in that game, and really transformed it into, a very memorable experience. And, the story is something that people also like to praise a lot about Shadow of Colossus. If anybody's played it, there's a big twist at the end. I won't spoil it. But like this one, this gameplay part of the game for me just really stuck out and really cemented itself as one of the better ones that I've played for sure in my 30 years of playing video games.
Yeah, that's a very great game and a great boss fight to highlight. The whole game is a great showcase of how very simple design. Like the only tools at your disposal are your horse, your bow, and your sword.
Right.
And so you're not doing anything crazy when you meet these bosses, but it is incredible to pull up on a boss and just show just how a sense of scale impacts everything. The boss is just flying in the air. The music hasn't changed. There's still this somber music playing, and you're just watching it fly. And there's just, like, as we talked about with like Death Stranding, this kind of weird catharsis and just watching this giant beast exist. And it's not until you look at it and you realize that it's got highlighted big white balloons that it's flying on that you're like, well, I only have a bow, so I have to shoot those because I have no other options here. There's no structures to climb on that will reach as high. And just having the shoot those, and then the second the thing goes in the sand and you're coming up on it with your horse, the music's ramping up, and this big beast, which was high in the sky, is now next to you, and it still has this sense of scale. It's huge compared to you and your horse. And it's just a great example of some of these game designers, like, don't overcomplicate these things. Just make it a cool experience that you're gonna remember forever. Don't it doesn't have to be a giant puzzle or anything. Just keep it simple. And again, it's a boss fight we're still talking about. This is Shadow of the Colossus is an old game, and here we are talking about this all the bosses really, but particularly this boss fight is just being so incredible and memorable.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a testament to to the boss design and everything in that game too, because like that game, I don't know about you, Nick, that game handles like shit. it's very clunky. You know, everything you when you stab the monsters, you know, you have this big, you raise your arm real high, and it just takes a long time, and it just feels kind of gross. But you're not playing it for that reason. And I'm a gameplay first kind of guy. You know, you just can't help but look away from these creatures that that you were watching one moment in the air fly above you, and now, oh crap, I'm on top of it.
Right.
Really something special.
I wonder if it's like one of those things like with the original older Resident Evils, that the tank controls, you had to turn your guy to face a direction and then walk. Yeah. Like they added to like the tension in the game because you weren't as in control, and maybe that's kind of what, maybe not you, but maybe that's why people like it, is your character feels a little more not as in control, so these boss fights can be a little more intense, a little more scary, because you're not in perfect control of your character. I don't know if that was their intention, but just a thought I had when you had mentioned that.
No, I think that there could definitely be some truth to that. It is, it is funny when you're grabbing onto this thing and it turns over, and then your guy just kind of ragdolls all over the place. Yeah, you really never do truly feel like you're in control, and that's probably to the benefit.
Yeah. So
what you got, Nick?
All right, so moving on, I am going to go into the Batman Arkham series, and the Batman Arkham series has had a lot of incredible boss fights, but I think most people will agree that it was the Mr. Freeze fight in Batman Arkham City that was really memorable. And the setup of the fight is pretty simple. You're stuck in a room with Mr. Freeze, and you got to take him down. You've done this to 100 bad guys like him between Arkham Asylum and Arkham City up to this point. And when you start using your moves on him, you're knocking him down, you're like, I gotcha, and you're beating him up. And then when you go to perform the move again, he's not allowing you to do it. So if you took him down using a window, he's freezing that window over. If you took him from a great takedown, he freezes all the greats. If you're using one of your gadgets to get to him, he'll remember that gadget's audio cue, and he'll now start dodging it. So now you're getting challenged here as a gamer. Maybe you were playing the whole game and you're only using 1 to 3 to 4 takedowns to take down these run-of-the-mill thugs, but now you have to use all of them to get to him, because with every takedown you use, that's one less option to use on the next takedown. And it's just a really smart game design, because I don't know about you, John, but even in like stealth games like Metal Gear Solid 5 that give you a wide array of tools, or a Devil May Cry game or a Bayonetta game where you're given infinite amount of combos, just as myself, I kind of get in these loops because they work, right?
Yeah.
I'm using the same takedowns, the same ways to take down all these enemies. So I wanted to highlight this fight because that's what it did. It challenged how you played the game. And once you figured it out, it was not that bad of a fight, but it was just cool to sit there and be like, oh shit, one less option. Oh god, and then one less option. Like, oh, what else did the game show me how to take down these guys? Mm-hmm. I don't remember. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that as the fight itself, and then just as that mechanic in a game.
Yeah, it's definitely the strong suit of that fight is the design of it all. Rocksteady did a great job, utilizing the things that they've taught you throughout the game. I like everything you said, but kind of to answer your question a little bit earlier, I definitely get into those rhythms with the game. I think of to this day, God of War, the first one, right? Square, square, triangle, square, square, triangle, square, square, triangle. That's what you do. Like although you're getting these different powers from different gods throughout the game, it's like I don't want to use that. I'm just gonna square, square, triangle. Or or Horizon Forbidden West, a game that I just platinumed. I did every trophy in the game. I don't think I used a trap once. And Nick and I had a conversation about that, he's like, oh, I love traps. Like, they do so much damage. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't need them, so I'm not going to worry about it. And so, it's a really, really, like I said, a testament to Rocksteady that they're going to, force you as the player to really think back and really use the environment to your advantage. Because in this fight, there's ways to get into a grate underneath the floor that you have to pop out and surprise Mr. Freeze. You have to use your, what is it, the bat goop that explodes. It's basically C4, right, on the other side of a wall. That explodes. Or, you can probably speak to the level of the different ways to take him down better than I can. But, the Batman Arkham series is definitely one I've been wanting to go back and replay because I think I played them, at least Asylum before I was really truly, I would consider myself a quote unquote gamer. And Arkham City, it was kind of right when I started to get there, and which is the game that Mr. Freeze is in. So I think I would come have a larger appreciation for it now that I've seen so much different game design and, and how certain teams do it and how certain teams don't, to really appreciate it. But I think that is definitely a great one to highlight.
Yeah, and I think like in bringing it back to Horizon Forbidden West, I think that was the point of the hunting grounds was even though it was optional thing, you didn't have to do it, but if you were going for the platinum, you did have to do them. And when you do it, it's like, oh, I can do this and I can do this. I can shoot weapons off of some of the dinosaurs and then use them against them. I can, use all these different weapons. I forget what is the one that throws the disc and brings it back.
Yeah, we'll just say slingshot because I don't know.
Yeah, it's not the slingshot. The slingshot is another weapon, but
right.
Yeah, but these games, they give you so much ways to do what you want to do, and it is nice that you can kind of figure out what you like best, and it's great that you can use that throughout the game. But it's also nice to highlight those things and maybe force you to do them, so you can expand your gameplay experience. Maybe the next encounter, you're like, oh, I see the electricity box over here, and I can shoot it with Batman's electric gun, and now I can electrocute any foes that are near it, So, especially because at the beginning of a lot of these games, they're just throwing all this at you, like, all this information. It's like, it's hard to even remember that you could do that in the first place. So, it's a pretty special boss fight because it, like I said, as gamers, we're kind of creatures of habit, and this is a nice fight that has to break that habit. So
doesn't Mr. Freeze in the beginning of the fight, he's like, you can't get me, and then you beat the crap out of him, and at the end he's like, here, take my weapon, I want to help you. Isn't there something silly like that?
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Video games.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the next tool you need for the next area.
Yeah. So moving on, John, what's the next boss fight?
So, not to be repeating myself too much on this show and talking of God of War nonstop, and I think I mentioned the Stranger fight a couple times, but the Stranger fight in God of War 2018 is the first fight I think about when I think of boss fights done well. It just sets the tone of the game beautifully. The game's it's very, very early on in the game, right? You haven't even really started to explore outside of the very first area, and you get this knock on the door with somebody basically saying, "Hey, I know you're in there." And you're like, what the heck? Well, I know Kratos. You used to be a Roman god, and now we're in this strange land, so nobody should know who I am. Nobody should know that I'm here. And this guy's knocking on my door, basically saying, "Come on out. I have a bone to pick with you." And then you come out, you see just a regular dude with some tattoos, kind of standing in front of you, talking about how he found you, and you're supposed to be so much more enlightened than my kind are, and you're just like, wait, what is happening? And then he starts to hit you, and he's not doing anything. He's just knocking your feet. He's like basically giving you little bitch smacks. And it's not until he really pushes Kratos, so Kratos hits him, and he's like, finally, okay. And then he hits Kratos, and Kratos flies over a house and smashes through the house, and the camera stays on Kratos the entire time. Camera never breaks, which is one of my favorite things about that game. But it's such a powerful moment because you think at the start of this game, what Kratos, what kind of a journey Kratos is going to have. He's going to probably go to Hades again, probably have to fight out of Hades, fight some monsters, fight some big things. You're not going to really be threatened by this humanoid creature or guy that's just kind of coming to your doorstep, and the way that they subvert your expectations and kind of really mess with you a little bit, like, oh crap, who is this guy? Really starts to make you ask questions, and approach the boss fight not just from a gameplay standpoint, but from a narrative standpoint. Who is he? Why do you know who I am? Are you a Norse god? Obviously you're super strong, or are you somebody who followed me here? And as the fight's going on too, there's certain things that are being talked about. The stranger keeps mentioning, oh, I see 2 beds in your house. Who are you hiding from me? What are you keeping in there? Why? It seems like he's looking for something, and so Kratos obviously knows that, oh crap, he's looking for my son. And it just really sets the groundwork for this story that's going to be told throughout the game in such a satisfying way to get you to involved in the fight. And and it has everything that makes a great God of War fight too. I think at one point you basically punch a tree over, use the tree as a baseball bat, and hit the stranger. You throw him into a gigantic boulder, punch the boulder away with your fists, and crush him with it. You think the fight's over, you walk away. The guy lifts the boulder, throws it at you, you smash. It's just everything you like about a visceral God of War fight, even up until the way it ends with twisting a neck covered in blood. It's just fantastic from top to bottom. And and also another small thing about it is the voice acting. It's the stranger's played by Jeremy Davies, who I think is one of those actors that everybody recognizes, but not a lot of people know his name. He's in Saving Private Ryan, Lost, Twister, Justified. He's somebody that I think you would recognize if you typed his name in. He voice acts. His voice acting is amazing during the whole thing and throughout the whole game. And even when the fight ends, you still have questions. Did I kill him? Who? What? Why is he chasing me down? And just really, gets you invested into the story and blows you away from the start, man. Like it's just such a good tone setter and really special fight in a special game.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted Jeremy Davies, because I think his performance is what really sells this. It just, in the clip that we shared last week, like, that voice is so grating and so obnoxious. And if you haven't seen The Stranger, he's a very skinny, very small Norse man, especially compared to Kratos. He's like goading you on, and if you've played the previous God of War games, you're screaming at your TV like, I'm the motherfucking God of War. I took down the entire pantheon of Greek gods and titans. And this guy, who are you? This little tiny guy is going to come and mess with me? Like, no, come on. And then just have the fight escalate over and over, and you're really beating the shit out of him, and still he's goading you. He's just really getting under your skin, and the
he's
fight.
Talking about how, like, I can't feel anything. Like, oh, I thought you'd make me feel something. Like, oh, you're just a weak little bitch, and just like Kratos so angry.
Right, and you're just throwing everything out of him. You're going into Spartan rage. You're using all the mechanics. Like, this is very early on in the game, so the fight itself is not very hard, but you still are using a lot of mechanics. So, the counter mechanic, parry, using stuff like that. But it's just, again, it's like the mechanics here are so simple, but because of the music, the scale, the performances, it's a memorable fight. It's just like, oh my God, what just happened to me? And this is the beginning of the game. This is within the first hour this fight occurs. So it's like, you're in. I was like, wow, it can only get crazier from here, because I just fought a skinny dude and it destroyed my house. So.
Right. Or like at the end of that fight, they're like clutching, they're like pushing against each other with their hands, and like their feet are digging into the earth, and the earth starts to separate, and you really get a sense for like, oh my God, like just how strong these two are, and how do we get even crazier than this for the next 25 hours of this game? And it really is. I don't know how you top a fight like that in the sequel, but I hope there's something on that level of just, like, what the hell? Like, I didn't think this was possible in a fight. And again, with the single camera shot, I just love how the camera just is constantly revolving around them, and it never takes you off of Kratos. You fly up into the sky, he shoots you down into a cavern or into like a ravine, you climb back up. it's just everything just keeps ratcheting up. It's so good.
Yeah, the work is cut out for not only the development team at Sony Santa Monica, but also Ryan Hurst, who is playing Thor in this game.
Yeah.
He is going to have to match this performance, and he does talk over the back of the Sony showcase trailer of last year, and it does sound very good. So I'm 100% sure he's gonna nail the performance. But the bar has been set by this fight.
Absolutely.
All right. So moving on, I'm going to highlight a PS5 exclusive from last year, Returnal. Returnal is a third-person roguelike coming from Housemarque Studios, who have done a few PlayStation games. And it was one of the big PS5 only releases of last year. You cannot play it on PS4. And throughout the game, it's kind of a third-person bullet hell. So all the bosses, all the enemies you fight shoot giant orbs that just fly at you, and they can do all kinds of crazy things. But I did want to highlight one of the boss fights in that, and that is Hyperion. Now, Hyperion appears in Act 4 of the game. When you get into Act 4, there's kind of like this music playing over the background, and it has some kind of personal connection to the player-controlled character, Celine. So she keeps freaking out about this. What is this music? What's happening? And as you're walking through the level, if you're using the 3D audio, it's kind of like the 3D audio is always coming from this one center location. So you got this nice little build-up of, oh man, what am I going to see? What am I getting into? So, and then when you finally get through the level, it is this really monstrosity, alien-looking thing. He's playing on a giant, what looks like a church organ, and he's got tentacles attached to all of these things. And what happens next is a big boss fight with this music playing in the background over and over. The monster's playing this music and just shooting every type of orb at you. Blue orbs, green orbs, red orbs. The screen is just filled with lights. So it's just a memorable fight, a memorable build-up to the fight, and then a memorable fight in a game of a bunch of boss encounters that really stuck out to me. Again, I don't think anything really crazy or mind-blowing from a combat encounter is going on. In fact, the fight in the game is not very hard. I don't think I died at all. I beat it on my first run at this boss. But again, the atmosphere, the enemy design, the combat, and the music all build to just this memorable fight that sticks with a lot of people. And in fact, that they did a big, if you look on Sony's PlayStation blog, they did a whole article about the design of that fight, which is a very interesting read. And again, it's kind of sticks to the theme of all these memorable boss fights, that there doesn't have to be really a unique mechanic to make it memorable. It just, everything around it, surrounding it, artistic design, music design, can contribute to a fight that you'll remember forever. John, what did you think of this fight when you got to it?
Oh, absolutely amazing. Everything you said, definitely on point. I think Housemarque is one of the most underrated developers out there. I was very, very excited when Sony purchased them as a first-party team, because I've played a lot of their games in the past, and they're a little more niche titles, but I knew what they were capable of, and Returnal really blew it out of the water. With this boss specifically as well, where you enter this arena, and as you said, just to see this, Returnal's gross, right? There's tentacles. It seems like you're in this just horrible place, and so you see this monstrosity playing the piano, and obviously you're gonna fight it, but the music just happening in the background is so good. And I'm a little vague when it comes to the story of Returnal. That's something I wish it hit a little bit better of. But something I read that is interesting about this fight is apparently there's a theory out there that Hyperion is your dad, because there's a certain flashback that Celine has where she's playing the piano, and she says that she learned everything she did from her father with the piano. And so just kind of a funny little thing there. I kind of gave up on trying to digest the story and understand it, because it is so obtuse. But if that is true, if there is something there, that's kind of a little bit of extra extraness to it. But yeah, that whole every boss fight in that game is great. Just the fast-paced, twitchy shooting nature of it. It controls so well. Celine does exactly what you want her to do at every single moment in that game. It's one of those games that you never have anybody to blame but yourself for when you screw up.
Yep.
So that's always a very good, feeling when you're playing a game. Something that FromSoft, probably the undisputed kings of boss fights have really fine-tuned and nailed is you never want to feel that you got gypped out or that you got cheated. And Hyperion does that. Every enemy in Returnal does that. Is you never feel like you got screwed. So I can't wait for what Housemarque does next. It's nice now to know that they were able to figure out how they want to interact in a 3D space, because typically in the past they were more twin stick shooter guys. Dead Nation, Alien Nation. I think they did
Super Stardust.
Super Stardust and Nex Machina, things like that. So, really kind of put their vision, into the 3D space, and it worked out perfectly. It was so good.
Yeah, and I mean, Sony bought them right after the game came out. Or was
Right.
I think it was after, right? I believe that was...
Yeah, I think it was right after, because I think there was people that were a little bit nervous that Returnal was a failure, because it wasn't. It was a little. It's again, Housemarque, niche developer, weird title, not sure what this is, and it didn't sell more than 1 million copies in its first month or two, which is good, right? But it's not what you would expect from a first party team. So I think there were some people saying, well, I don't know, is this the end of Housemarque? And for Sony to come in and say no, we are very, very pleased with this game, so much so that we want to buy the team, really speaks to the quality of the game, I think, and the quality of that team. And they're one of those untouchables for me, where everything I will play a game just because they're the ones behind it. So good stuff, man.
Yeah, great boss fight, great controls, just everything about it. Fantastic. And Returnal is on the PlayStation Plus Extra tier, so if you are interested in trying it out, my only advice is to stick with it.
Yes.
It's going to get very frustrating, but you become a badass very quickly. You'll learn all the enemy encounters, and it's an incredible game.
Yeah, definitely stick with it. Being that it's roguelike in nature, so you're going to die a lot, you're going to restart a lot and have to regain what you've gotten. But I think that's to the strength of the game. And I do want to say, Nick, before we go, because I can feel us starting to wrap up, special shout out, honorable mention to basically every From Software boss. It was really hard to, I was thinking about this, and that's obviously, where my mind kind of went. Bloodborne, one of my favorite games of all time. But what I kind of said in the start of this segment is that, I really wanted to highlight something that felt unique, something that, didn't feel like other things. And as amazing as From Software bosses are, they can tend to kind of fall into a couple different categories, whether it's a night boss who's, a big hulking sword kind of guy, or, just like a massive weird creature that you would come across in Bloodborne. So, not to say that none of those, some of those are as good as these bosses. It's just, I can't nominate 100, so I'm not going to nominate any. That's kind of how I feel. But just wanted a special shout out to those guys.
I appreciate your restraint, because at least you picked boss fights that I had actually played.
Yes.
Because if you picked any From Software boss, I would have just been like, well, how does he differ from the other bosses? I'd have no clue.
Oh, he doesn't. He's just really cool looking. And the other thing with FromSoft bosses too is I felt like I would run into an issue where it's like, is it memorable because it's amazing, or is it memorable because he killed my ass 50 times and I finally beat him, and so I felt great. But yeah, Nick, as you guys will find out, just needs to get good, as they say, and finally play a FromSoft game, but he refuses, so we'll see.
Maybe if they update Bloodborne, because I feel like that's the game that has turned a lot of people. So maybe if Bloodborne gets either a remake or just a PS5 remaster, that I might jump in then.
You will, because I'm gonna berate you until you can't take it anymore, until you play that game.
All right. Well, here it is. I will try it if those things happen. So.
All right. I'll take it.
All right. Well, that's 6 things. We did it again. I'm expecting next week to be news on everything we talked about, because that seems to be the cadence. 'Cause if we talked about it, there'll be a news item about it next week. So expect Returnal news. I don't know what. There's not going to be like Shadow of the Colossus news, unfortunately.
It's PS5 remake, man. It's like 4 years old at this point. Remake it again.
But maybe there'll be some Gotham Knights news next week because we talked about Arkham City. So
that's true.
But speaking of roguelikes, we're going to end you on a song from a roguelike. John, do you want to talk about our ending song here?
Another great one. Yeah, it's In the Blood from Hades, which is the end credits song, where when you finally beat Hades, I believe, for the 10th time, and you get credits rolled. And I could talk for hours about this game, but I'll stop there.
No, what's the best boss in Hades? Keeping it on our memorable boss encounters.
It's probably Theseus and I can't remember the Minotaur's name, Arcterius, I can't remember, but probably those two, because he's such a smug little bitch, and when you finally beat him, it feels good, and it's probably the hardest fight in the game as well. So getting past that hurdle is a good feeling.
He is the stranger of Hades.
Yeah.
just goading you the whole
man.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, there's a lot of FUs when you beat that guy for the first time, for sure.
Right.
So, all right. We'll leave you with that. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We will be back next week with another episode. We'll see you then.
Take care, guys.
The entire unit was wiped out. Those 3 are still alive. Yes, sir. I recovered all of Rex's dummy warhead data. No, sir. My cover is intact. Nobody knows who I really am. Yes, DARPA Chief Anderson knew my real identity, but he's been disposed of. True, the inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the lesser clone. No, sir. No one knows that you were the third one, Solidus. Yes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. President.